Okay, people, we have a last minute addition from Signature, right? It is called, oh, what am I doing? Yes, here we go. It is called Showdown at the Grand. This is written and directed by Orson Oblowitz. The film is produced by Mira Pack Howard, Christian DeGalgos. It's executive produced by Matthew Helderman, James Holt, Valerie Lopez, Thomas Mann, Gregory McLaughlin, Hani Selmi, and Luke Taylor. Daniel Delara handles the music, Noah Rosenthal, cinematography, Brett Solom edits the piece, Coca Regal was on costume design, production management is Maggie Walsh, art department is Laura Seaman, and our cast, well, Terrence Howard plays George Fuller, right? We have got his concessions assistant, a new hire, Spike, played by Pippa Curda. His friend Lucky is played by John Savage. And his favorite film star, Claude Luc Hallyday, is played by Dolph Lundgren. Then there is Lynn. Ooh, yes, old Lynn, the villainous oh god, the corporate, Lynn Schrader, right? She is played by Amanda Righetti. One of her henchmen, Reed, is played by Mike Ferguson. And the other one, Burton, is played by John Sakaloff. Yeah, that is the main cast. So the gist of the film is this: a proud movie theatre owner must defend his family business from corporate developers alongside a legendary action star as art imitates life in a showdown for the ages. Okay. Well, we have got a couple of statements from the director, writer, and the producer. So Orson Oblowitz said, "This film was written in the early stages of lockdown. As we watched movie theaters shutter across the globe, it forced us to imagine a world where the cinema ceased to exist as gentrification overran our neighborhoods. Showdown is a tribute to that dark, musty place, as well as to movies of the past that, though may have been made on a shoestring budget, were full of bravado and style, helping us to understand politics, violence, emotions, all the while giving us 90 minutes of respite from all the madness. This has been a wild ride from conception to completion, but I cannot thank enough the amazing cast, crew, and partners we've had along the way." His producer, Christian D. Galacos, said this: "This was a labor of love for Orson and I, and we couldn't be prouder of what we hope will become a cult film and about cult films. The journey to make Showdown ended up an ironic manifestation of production showdowns, ultimately crescending at the Warner Grand, but it was all worth it, and we were blessed with an iconic lead who fought the good fight along with us." I mean, that's kind of ambiguous. Like, huh? The manifestation of production showdowns. So what like what happened? You know what I mean? That's yeah, that's an odd way to leave it. I feel making a film to be a cult film, that never seems to go well, right? Because you're doing things to kind of be like, oh yeah, people loved it. Yeah, let's throw this in there. And like a cult film just becomes a cult film. You know what I mean? There's no rhyme or reason to it. Like there's some stinkers that have just become cult films, or films that didn't blow up for whatever weird reason suddenly become cult films, right? I don't think you can manufacture that. So that's interesting. And it's like it's a cult film about cult films. Well, I don't know, because the films in the film are all fictional, right? We have Necropolis, Moses v. the Nazis, Iraqnophobia, right? So Iraq is in Iraq, you know what I mean? Cyber Cartel, Blood is for the Living, and Death in the West, right? We see clips of all of these films which were starring, you know, Luke people. My just brah, starring Claude Luc Hallyday, right? Dolph Lundgren's character. Those were his films. You know what I mean? So yeah, we're watching this film because George, right? Our leading man, played by Terrence Howard, George Fuller, he loves Claude Luc Hallyday films. You know, that's his favorite film star. These are his favorite films. So yeah, we you know, we see him in this, and like, and he's got hard times, right? It's never full, you know, it's never full, but he's persevering, persevering to keep this running, and hires Spike, right? That's one of our early things. We see Spike come in. You can tell she is a film lover, which he's questioning, right? So that's a bit weird, right? There's some weird things happening here. Like the whole questioning of Spike's love of film. As I feel a conversation reveals your love of film, right? And it's not knowing all the titles and things like that. It's the passion in which you talk about it, right? Can show your love of this medium. So that whole conversation was a little weird, right? And then he's basically saying you work for free, because he's like, I'll take you on as an intern. And interns don't get paid, right? So it's just a bit like, huh, that's kind of shitty, right? So at that point, we think that's it. And you think like, oh, has he got no money? But then he's paying for a first class ticket and all these other things. And you're just like, okay, so there is money. There might not be a whole heap, but there's money. So what's happening here? You know? So that was weird. And another, like, the cinema, you know, this corporation wants to buy it, right? It's buying land so it can build this big complex, which, you know, we've seen happen, right, in gentrification. But knowing what is wanted and some of the escalation that this corporation is looking to do, we don't really see George put in any contingencies, right? He's banking on this big appearance from Halliday, but that's just giving him money, right? It's not like the corporation is like, oh, well, give us some money and we'll leave you alone. No. So right? That's for him to, pay his bills. But there's nothing in place to counter what might happen, which is very weird because he's watched all of these films, all of these corny, let's say 80s, right? 80s films. And he would then have just an inkling of what this escalation might be. You know what I mean? But no, there's just nothing. There's nothing that he does, which does feel very weird. Like where this film does shine, right? I will say this, where this film shines is these pseudo movies, right? These little vignettes that we see throughout, because they do feel like those crazy 80s B movies. Like we in the UK, they would be showing late night on like Channel 4 or ITV. You know what I mean? That's where you might see those films, right? A lot of times there'd be things and it's horrendously dubbed. And if I'm saying they're horrendously dubbed, people, oh, it's bad, right? Because my side is so bad. I don't usually notice that when something is, the dialogue is out of sync with the people's lips. But these films were so bad, you could clearly see, right? The mouth movement would be like, and then a minute later, the dialogue, right? It was so crazy. So these vignettes, these pseudo films, they did remind you of that. The way they got like the grain effect, like there's just the color grading, just all of that made you think of those, right? The dialogue. Oh my gosh. I think there's a bit when what film was it? I think it must have been oh no, it wouldn't have been. Gosh, it's the cyber one, right? Cyber cartel. No, 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 no. It wasn't the cyber cartel. It was Blood is for the Living, because it was the vampire one. And Logan's character, right? Claude Luc Hallyday is squaring off with the big bad vampire. And I think he says sometimes, like, you better watch out because I'm going to bring the rain. And she's like, I don't mind getting wet. You're just like, oh my God. Oh my God. It's so bad. Oh my, it was so bad. But as I said, it reminded you of those films. So those made me smile. Those were fun, right? Those were a lot of fun. The rest of the film, I don't know. The rest of the film was very up and down, right? The dialogue was all over the place, right? There wasn't a real rationale for what was happening, because as I said, there's no plans put in place by George, right? There was no, in the first instance, like calling the police or anything, there was none of that. So it just doesn't necessarily make any sense, right? The trajectory of what is going on, and then the last fight scene, with the way we see the body movement, what happens makes no sense whatsoever. Right? Because you're going, okay, if that happened, then something else would have happened, but it hasn't. So, what blow? What blow with this, man? What's going down? You know what I mean? It's yeah, it's crazy. I don't know, man. Like, if you like B movies, right? If you're a fan of those straight to DVD, straight to videos, classics from back in the day, right? I say classics. None of them were classics, but they were classics for the people that love that stuff. You know what I mean? If that's what you like, then I think you will like this. You know what I mean? Like, I felt that it was kind of trying to channel things like Ghost Dog, right? Remember that film, Lawrence Fishburne, the samurai? That was so fucking good, right? About a guy kind of stuck in the past in some ways, but following this moral code, right? But everyone else was just like, fuck that shit. You know what I mean? And this George Fuller is he's our ghost dog, right? But it's just the film doesn't hold up like Ghost Dog, unfortunately. You know what I mean? It doesn't. But yeah, if you're a fan, you know what I mean? If you're a fan of that type of film, then I think this will work for you, right? I am a little bit confused though, right? I will tell you this about Olsen's statement, right? About how gentrification was shutting down, and in lockdown, that's why the theaters were shutting. That wasn't really why the theaters shut during lockdown, right? And what I mean when I say shut, I mean closed for good, went out of business, right? Because yeah, that being shut meant they made no money, right? But where was your slush fund? You know what I mean? That's what happened to cinemas, that there was no contingency plan put in place. And there's a whole heap of things that might shut a cinema, right? Like, remember when there was that mass shooting in the cinema? I think it was like a decade ago, right? Wasn't it when Batman Returns opened? Something like that. That can shut cinemas, right? Fires, just, you know what I mean? Like, there's different things that can shut a cinema. So you'd think there would be a plan in place to counter for those things, but they didn't, right? People weren't going to cinemas because it's so friggin' expensive. And the offer isn't always worth what you're paying. Right? When you can go into cinemas and they let people talk and act up with, there's no checks by the staff, and it's a mess. So would you really pay on the reg to go to that? No, you wouldn't. Right? Concessions are crazy expensive. You're not paying to go to that cinema. So there was a load of things, the cinemas, that what they were doing that brought about their own demise, right? Now, when you find a great cinema, great staff, great service, great value, you go back. You know what I mean? That's it, right? So there's been gentrification issues that have shut down cinemas, right? They're trying to close down the Curzon in Soho in London, right? And their Curzon is fighting. You can sign a petition and all of that jazz. Now that is gentrification. But the Curzon, you know what I mean? If it wasn't for that, they're not shutting. They're good. So yeah, that message is a little bit weird, but that was a little tangent from me. Anyway, people, this will be out, right? This film will be dropping for you on Monday, the 13th of November. So it'll be on all your favorite VODs. There's a link for the Apple TV. You can purchase it there. So yeah, if this feels like it's a film for you, you like those 80s B movies that were straight to DVD, then Showdown at the Grand could be just your thing. All right.